Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey.
Hi, thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Opalewski, CEO of Spark Companies. And I just want to start this off by saying thank you to Ben. I'm grateful to kick off the event. And I just want to tell you that you've created an amazing community and you should be proud of that. You're going to hear from not just me, but from many other speakers this week, some who are my friends and some that I've heard on Ben's podcast, and I'll be watching, for the first time along with you guys. I also, quick plug, I'm very proud that one of our portfolio company presidents will be speaking, Dom Crossan, as well. So make sure to check out his talk as well. So with that, let's get into it. Here's what's important to understand about, me getting up here and doing this with you guys. I'm not a speaker. I do some speaking, now and then, but I'm not a speaker. I do have some experience building some businesses. Spark Companies is a portfolio of 7 workforce solutions companies, and I'm also a managing partner in 2 other businesses outside of workforce solutions, one in real estate and one in food and beverage. This year, our businesses will do over $40 million in sales, and more importantly, and we're going to get into this, over $21 million in gross profit. That's a 52% profit margin, growth profit margin. Most businesses are going to operate between 15 to 35% on that gross profit number. And I don't say that as a reason to, brag or try and impress you, but to impress upon some points. You see, we're in a situation, and this event is about finishing the year strong. And so some of us may be coming into this event and we're having a great year. We're growing. Kudos to you. I'll challenge you right now to think about how we can always improve. We can always get better. There's always another gear. And I hope that if you are growing, you're of that mindset. I don't think you'd be with us today if you're not. Let's also address the reality in the room. Over the last 2 years, based off SAA data, the industry is down 25%, over the 2-year period. That's the norm. So if you're going through some adversity, if you're struggling, understand you're not the only one. And there's hope for you on this as well. So what we're going to go through today is most, not all, but most of the things that we implemented over the last 4 years. And over the last 4 years, our companies, our portfolio has grown over 441% in gross profit. Well, that is great. I want to be the first one to tell you these are the things that we've not only worked on, but we're still working on today. Because like I said, there's always room to improve. And I know for us to get to our next gear, we have to continue to hone our efficiencies on the things we're going to talk about. I also want to speak again to the people that might be in a situation where they're setting up not to grow this year, maybe. When we implemented this in 2020, we implemented a lot of the things that we're going to go through today. We were in the middle of a year, and we ended that year down 26% on our high for gross profit. It was a tough year for me. We have done some good things within business. We knew how to recruit. We knew how to sell. I don't want to totally discount what we had done at that point. We had done some good things. But I had to grow. I had to learn as a leader. We had to mature as an organization to be able to take the next steps forward and really go after our mission of creating 100,000 opportunities a year. To focus on our purpose to help people grow, we had to get better. And so we're going to cover this today. I hope that I don't think you're going to be able to apply everything that we go through, today, but I hope that you take notes I hope that you get the recording and work on starting with implementing at least one of these things and then stack it brick by brick. Okay, with that being said, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to discuss, part one, is becoming elite at your core fundamentals. Core fundamentals. Okay, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is tools. Think of this from the desk level. We're talking right now at a desk level. So Ben just had a summit, an AI summit focused around technology. And I think that's great. And we actually bought the recording, and we literally have a person in our organization who their project right now is to go through those recordings and set up demos and pick out, the 1, 2, 3 tools that we want to try and beta test within our organization. So hear me on that. I'm not discounting the use of tools when I get into this. We do a lot of spend on Indeed, on LinkedIn, on ZipRecruiter, on Professional Seats, Zoom Info, Sense, MetaView, the list goes on and on and on. We're looking at Clay and a couple of these other things that maybe some of you are already using. I'm not knocking that stuff. It's good to use it. And we'll get into that towards the end of the talk on how to use these things. But the tools cannot be a crutch. See, here's what's going to set you apart. I believe that the phone is a weapon. Face-to-face conversations are a weapon in your arsenal. They're on your tool belt. They need to be on your tool belt. This is the key thing. It's crazy. If you've been in the industry, I've been doing this 17 years, and this is how we learned. And again, I'm not knocking using these tools, but the tools need to be the funnel that get you to the art of recruiting. And the art of recruiting is still going to be talking to people on the phone well, in building relationships face-to-face, getting away from transactional behaviors or using the transactional tools to get you to the art of recruiting, which is building the relationship. We're in a people business, and it's crazy. And you see this in 2022. You see people that went all transactional, all technology, and I'm not saying that they didn't do some good things, but a lot of those people fall into that category right now of being down. And why is that? It's because when things tighten up, hear me on this, hear me. Been doing this 17 years, and when things tighten up, it's those with the best relationships and the most saturation within a business that stand the test of the time, that stay in the fight with their clients and keep pushing forward. When you're only using these tools, you're not doing any face-to-face meetings, you're not getting on phone conversations, you're not listening to people, you're just pushing them through, you're going to struggle during this time. See, it's the inefficiencies. Spelled that wrong. Forget it. Okay, it's the inefficiencies that are going to make you different. So it's these little things. It's the handwritten note. It's the going out to the client when it's more convenient to send an email. It's the walking someone into an interview. It's the following up with a gift if that's allowed, within your clients. Be careful on that if it's not. There's these little gestures that take time out of your day. There's so many efficiency things for our time. I'm not saying don't use them, but what's going to set you apart right now and into the future, this excites me, is you're going to have to be intentional. You got to teach your team, specifically new team members that are coming in. Maybe it's their first time in the workforce. They're less and less likely to want to get on the phone. They're less and less likely to want to be face-to-face, doing meetings, getting on a recording, all these kinds of things. You have to push this stuff by leading by example and talking about it and making sure it's a part of your system. This is important. Okay. Number 2. You must focus on your in process. Okay. So here's the deal. We're not going to talk today about how many submittals you should have in your KPIs or how many calls you should do in a week, even though we just hit on some stuff within the calls. It's not what we're going to talk about. I want to take it advanced past that point. I think a lot of people that are listening to this probably understand that they should have some KPIs and a blueprint on how much they should do of that. But your in process is what I want to focus on. That's your pipeline. Think of it as your recruiting or your business development pipeline. The better your in process number is, the better your pipeline is. And the better your pipeline is, the better you're ready to handle storms and push ahead and grow your business. So let's get into it. We got a lot of different styles of recruiting that are potentially on this, so I have to be careful. But fortunately, I have some experience doing that within our portfolio because we run a lot of different styles within our portfolio. So it's not my first rodeo doing this. And these are in general. You need to pick your own numbers. But I believe for niche recruiting, contingent, so think engineering, IT, niche skill trades, things like that, the in-process number should be 10 at all times. You always want to have 10 in process, minimum. If you can go up above that, you're setting yourself up for success. Okay, we move into volume. So you got light industrial, you got VMS, or any kind of like volume recruiting, could be call center, whatever it is, any kind of volume recruiting, and this in-process number should go higher, should go to 20. So you're talking to more people, you're submitting more people, you got more people in the system. Okay, so these are key numbers, and you should be watching these daily. We talk about, there's a saying, success, with success, the rent's due every day. And this is a tangible example of the rent being due every day. Where you stand on these numbers are going to dictate your success long-term. It's going to be a big part of it. And so understand what we're fighting here is first a productivity, measure. We got to get up to speed on productivity, but then we're also battling with attrition. And this is what I love about the in-process number and teaching it to people, talking to it about people, because it's a simple concept, but simple doesn't mean it's easy to execute time over time and time again. So you have your situations where someone doesn't get a job, someone isn't selected, for an interview, someone backs out of an interview, someone disappears or gets a flat tire, or whatever may happen, all the excuses that we hear. You could have a position that the competition fills. You could have a position that the client decides, hey, you know what, we don't need that. These are all forms of bad attrition. And that's a part of working through your in-process number. But there's another form of attrition. Attrition's not all bad. You have good attrition too, and that comes in the form of your starts. When people start, when they go to work, when you are selected for programs, if it wasn't a start, which we'll get into some of this stuff a little bit later. But that is going to drop your in-process number as well. And so it's one thing to get up to these numbers and be working with someone on doing that's battling negative attrition. It's a whole nother level and a real roadblock that comes up where someone starts to taste success or they get on a run. How many of us have seen this in our business, or you've seen it in yourself, maybe both, where you get on a hot run, whether you're tracking this or not, you get multiple starts, but then you have a period of time where it retracts back. And we'll see this where someone goes hot on this, they go up 10, 12, whatever it is, volume, they're up at 20, 30, they run a hot program, they do a great job on it, their commission checks go up, and then what happens over the next couple weeks? This drops down. So that 20, 30, 40% of where it's supposed to be. It's like, well, I had all these people start. And this is a great coaching moment for the leaders, on the call. It's about continually doing the things that bring us success. It's so important. And this gives you a framework to use to watch this and stay on top of it, not just for yourself, but for anyone on your team. So if you're not already doing this, I highly recommend that. You do it, and we're going to get into some other things that you can do with it too. Here's the third thing, and this ties into in process. So a conversion ratio. So your conversion ratio is not to be confused with the fill ratio. They're two different things. And again, you could call it something different. We call it a conversion ratio. What it really is a submittal conversion ratio or proposal conversion ratio. Anything that we submit to a client, goes into this conversion ratio, and then we're watching how this spits out and what we actually, end up filling and converting and doing for the client versus what is deemed unsuccessful. And so in some of our, I'll give you a quick breakdown of this. In our volume recruiting, we want to be at 50% on this. In our niche recruiting, we want this number at 30%. In our VMS business, we want this at 15%. I'm going to say these again because I'd recommend you write them down. If you don't do this, it might be something to consider. Tweak these numbers. Feel free to tweak them how you want. But so for volume recruiting, we want to be at a 50% conversion ratio. For niche recruiting, we want to be at 30%, above 30%. And for VMS, where we have less control to less about what we call a white glove experience, just putting them into the system, 15%. And I'm not knocking that VMS business. It's the least of what we do. It's because most of our business lines are set up for high touch communication and a white glove experience. But we do run into it, as I'm sure some of you do as well. And so we still have it on here. It's a 15% conversion ratio. So all in all, and I didn't look at this week yet because I was focused on this talk, but every Monday I get this report from our finance team. And going into last week, our number sat at 41% on our conversion ratio across the whole portfolio. And yes, different portfolio companies had different, percentages. I just want to through a few of the things that you might have within your organization or styles of recruiting that you may be considering. So different areas should deem a higher number and pull that up, for you within your organization if you're doing multiple types of staffing business. I think this is one of the key factors in us continuing to push forward this year and making sure that we're coaching people in a good way and looking for where we need to make improvements, tracking this number. So it starts with this, it goes here, and what you can do with this to kind of tie this together before we move on is when I see my conversion ratio, well, if I'm a niche recruiter and I'm able to get my conversion ratio to 40%, if I can get to 40%, and I have 10 people in process at all times, I should know that I'm going to be able to convert 4 of those starts. Now, I'm not going to keep you here all day, so we're not going to get in like amount per placement, target amount per placement or anything like that. But that's a number that you should know or consider knowing. And one of the reasons why is you're setting up for really good forecasting and data. So I know that if my average start in niche skilled trades happens to be 20,000, that'd be pretty good, but just pick that number. If it was 20,000 in niche skilled trades, and I have 10 in process at all times, I should have $80,000 like ready to go in my pipeline that should start. And if I do better than that, then I should be able to push that up. So, okay, let's move on. But I'll say that one more time. I want to make sure that doesn't get by. Once I know a recruiter or a business unit's or a company's conversion ratio, I can look at their in-process number and I can predict or forecast, and I have an estimated reasonable idea of how the business is going to perform. And I can see where momentum's coming and where it's not. So these are things, and I want to take you through, part one was going through core fundamentals at a desk level. So you can deploy that as an individual. You could also deploy that as a person. I want to look at my notes here real quick. Okay. You can deploy that as a person that's scaling their company or runs a team or runs a business of multiple people. And that's what we'll kind of get into next. So, okay, going to get into part two. And so I want to think bigger picture now. So we talked about more at a desk level, and yes, you can apply some of those things. You're going to see some crossover in what we talk about next. But now we're talking about things at more of an overarching level. So think your overall strategy, your overall operations, and your overall sales approach. These are the 3 areas that I think we're going to touch on this. So number one, and before I get into this completely, but have a gross profit strategy. a gross profit strategy. This is something pre-2020 that we did not have. And we'll see how far we get into that here today. But before I go into this, if you don't understand your gross profit, one, that's okay. We consult for businesses, and we see a lot within companies that are doing below 1 million, above 1 million, below 3 million, even sometimes above 3 million in gross profit, that they don't really have this built out in their chart of accounts right for accounting. And so if you have a good person on your finance team, or you have a CPA, or if you have someone with some acumen, or if you have some acumen, hopefully you have this built out already. But I'd start there, that your homework is to go figure out what your gross profit is if you currently don't know that. Now, let's move on. For those of you that do know it, or if you've taken a good note there, like, I would refer back to this at a later date. So I'm going to give you 3 models on a gross profit strategy, and you can do whatever you want. I'm going to show you the one we're using right now. I'm going to share this stuff today. So here's the first one. I look at this as a conservative approach that is high margin. So this, for me, is a business that's of the mindset that they are wanting to maximize profits and minimize risk. So they're probably not hiring a lot. They're probably not investing in a ton of new tools. Some, but not going crazy on it. So in a high margin conservative business, they're going to try and go, there's 3 categories. You got team member. So you're going to spend gross profit on team members. You're going to do it on your operations. And then hopefully you're going to have a net income. So in a conservative high margin model, and again, I'm just giving you an example, there's other options on this, but you would see the team member spend at 40% of gross profit, operations at 15%, and net income at 45%. To me, this is a conservative model. Now, if you were going to try and raise this to 50, just to give you another example quickly, going below 40, man, you're really riding it tight on this, but you could try and go to 10, also really tight, and keep this at 40. You could do 15 and 35, and this pushes you to 50. There's a couple different ways to get to 50, but this is very conservative. And I'd caution someone on this, because even if you do a good job of doing this, at what expense? Are you keeping up with technology? Are you promoting people? Are you pipelining for the future on your team? These things are all important to consider. But that's a conservative model. Okay. Here's the model we use. Again, I'm willing to share it. And I'll say we use right now, because we've used some different ones, because you could do what you want, but I recommend that you evaluate this once a year. Stick with it for the year, in my opinion, unless something, outlandish happens, which most of us have probably experienced that if we've been in the industry. But stick with it for a year and then reevaluate your plan for the next year. And this is a great time to be planning. We start our formal planning in October, so we're right before that. I think this is perfect. So for us, 45% on team member spend, 15% on operations, and we'll have 40% on net income. We've run this for the last couple of years. Not always, when we were in a growth mode or a more aggressive growth mode in 21. And what I mean by that is we were coming out of that time where we had retracted. And so we were working on pushing some things faster that had retracted as we kind of set stuff. And so within that, our gross profit was not as high as we would like it to be, right? We had gone down, in 2020 on that gross profit. And so When you have less gross profit, you might be at higher percentages. So you might have to work your way towards this model. We had to work our way towards this model. In 21, we were higher. We're at 50, I believe 17, and then whatever that was for net income. We've worked our way to this model for 22, 23, and now 24. Well, in 22, we have what we call igniters. And in 22, we crossed over that igniter on that GP number. We crossed over it. And when we crossed over it, we started to get more aggressive on investing in our team member and ops. Now, not crazy, but we were beating this, but this is a guidepost. It's a guidepost. So just because we're over it doesn't mean that we can't choose to go outside of it, but we should do it for good reasons. So when we had already kind of won what we would deem our Super Bowl for the year, we weren't going to go, and be reckless, but we were looking to expand and grow. And that's part of how, we've grown the way I mentioned earlier. Well, we ended up a little high on our team member spend, which I lean this way because I believe in people. I'm all for using tools, but I lean this way. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we ended here at like 48. I know we landed here at like 14 or 15, so we were within budget, and we came in a couple percentage points low on net income. Okay, so that's what we do. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but we like that model for now. Now here is, I'll just call it ultra growth or aggressive growth model. I'm going to tell a story on this. Let me read these real quick. Okay. Again, could toy with these, but you could be as high as 55% on the team member spend. Might find yourself at 20 on ops, so you're investing heavy in technology and people as you grow, and this comes in then at 25%. Now here's the thing. I've heard some people that may even be on the call, maybe even talking, that will ride this number tighter. Whether it's this number or their EBITDA number, try and stay on task here without getting too far or too technical. But here's why I recommend being careful on that, because when you're making these investments, your business is complexifying. When you're adding team members, when you're adding tools, your business is going to keep complexifying. This is about my barometer because things can go wrong. And again, this is a guidepost for how you're trying to perform throughout the year. I think, if people are running at that 15%, I said a normal healthy business is going to operate between 15 to 35%. Well, if I start my framework for the year at 15% and then things don't go right for me, I'm going to end up in essentially a place I really don't like. And although we weren't deploying a gross profit strategy when we were entering into 2019 and 2020 timeframe, we weren't doing that yet. And I didn't know these numbers as well as I know them now. But fortunately, and I don't really believe in luck, but one area where we did have some luck is as we were growing, and we were growing relatively fast, I started making, I had learned my lesson on team members. I should check mark that. We're still doing a good job on that, but I hadn't learned my lesson here on ops. And this looks like this. People coming to you and say, we need this tool. We got to try this. We got to try that. And we're in an environment now where that's just like frantic. And this is an area where I really, really had to work because people would come in my office and we were growing and we were ahead of some of our targets and it was exciting. And we knew we were in aggressive mode. Again, we didn't have this built out, but we were in aggressive mode. And we overspent on tools that we didn't get good use out of. We didn't get good efficiency on them. And so I caution you, again, we didn't look at this, but fortunately we were able to do it in a way where we didn't go crazy on our team member ops spend, even though both ballooned higher than these numbers you see. And what did that mean? We came in lower than 25%, but we were still above 15%. And that's why, when I go back, I can calculate what the numbers were. I had no clue that this is what was happening when I looked at this in that time frame. But what I've realized for that, or the lesson in that, is that hey, this is a good aggressive approach without getting overly aggressive. If things don't go your way, you don't execute, or events happen outside of your control that put you in a bad spot. You should, I say should, because it depends what you're doing, within some of this stuff. Like as you keep going, you got to do the other stuff that we're talking about too. Because if you stop doing the good things, like your gross profit could totally tank. But within reason of you're doing good fundamental stuff, I think if that you run on this model, and as long as you're within striking distance of it, even if something happens that's unexpected or you just miss the mark, you should be able to stay profitable throughout the year. And it's important that you stay in the fight. I think it's important that you stay profitable too. Okay. So that's gross profit strategy. Second thing, and there's 6 on part 2, so stay with me. So you want to build a report card for your business. So we have a report card, and a GP strategy is part of it. And I'm not going to go through all 14 things that we measure. We do 14. They're either quarterly or monthly. Again, quarterly or monthly, 14 things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will share a few. Here's the number one thing that we're watching, we recommend. The number one is GP, so gross profit per person. Gross profit per person. It's the number one thing. I'm going to give you the ranges that we're going for too. So above average would be $29,000 a month per person. That's above average. Cool. We all want to be above average. It's a good place to be. Okay. Without going too far yet, you got best practice. And that would be $40,000 a month. $40,000 a month. So here's the deal. If I can get my gross profit within this range over a month period or quarter period, if we average that, I have a good hint, a good inclination that it might be time, if I want to grow my business, I think a lot of people do if you're here, it might be time, or I'm in a strong position if I want to try and add to the team that I can. Now we, again, not going to get into how aggressive you want to be and stuff, but we, as we've built the team up, have been more aggressive on when we make these ads than what you see. It's not until this year, with everything going on, that we've really tightened this a little bit, and we're working hard to get up over these numbers before we make hires. And not that we haven't made a hire before, done certain things, but we're really watching this right now. This is the number one thing. If you get nothing else today, well, first, calculate your gross profit. If you get nothing else today, figure out how to do your GP per person. And I would really put together some GP strategy. Like, I spent some time showing you a few models. Okay. So what are some other things that you should be tracking on here? So your DSO, your sales outstanding, days sales outstanding. So depending on your business, I don't know if you run accrual or cash, maybe we have a mix of both, but either way, you need to be collecting your cash. And whether that's you or you have an ops team, this is a number that you want to understand. You want to strategically work into your service agreements on how you're going to drop your day sales outstanding. This is an important metric within the staffing component of actually running the business. It may not be the most sexy to talk about, but everyone, at the end of the day, whatever numbers we post or say, if we don't collect the cash, it means nothing. So this is a very important number, and I recommend it for everyone, because without collecting your cash, you can't run a business. Okay. Third one that I recommend would be understand your reoccurrings, which we're going to get into in a minute. But your reoccurring margin, gross profit, divided by your operating expenses. You got to write the stuff down. This is really good. This is how you don't get yourself bit, or at least not in a way. I like to say, you might have the car out and you might dent it, but you're not going to total it if you put these things into play. So your reoccurring gross margins divided by your operating expenses. And there's a couple percentage points on this. If anyone wants, ours, I'll share it with you. Just shoot me a message and I'll share it with you. I want to keep moving today, but this is a very important calculation. And again, on this report card, I missed this, but you would have best practice, average. So above average, best practice. But over here, you got a danger zone. You want to stay out of the danger zone. So for example, back to DSO, if someone's DSO is at 47 days, well, anything above 45 is going to drop into the danger zone. They need to go to work strategically on how do we get this down. Now, maybe it's just making more calls and collecting money. Maybe it's how you strategically structure and communicate within your service agreements. It's probably both. But this would be a danger zone. So this is what the report card looks for all these different measurements. You have above average, best practice, danger zone. You definitely want to stay out of the danger zone. Okay. Again, we have 14 of these. I'm going to keep moving, but there's a couple. The other one, I guess one more real quick, would be profit per team member. So profit per team member, and I'll just share with you the best practice number would be $12,000 per team member a month, not a year, not quarter, a month. So these are good triggers. I just gave you some really good stuff. We could stop there and you go to work on this stuff and you're going to improve your business. But when you're looking at hiring, or should we add, or are we ready to add, or what do we got to do to develop our team? These are setting the foundational benchmarks for how you go about this. Again, I'm sharing with you the stuff that we do and are obsessed on within our own business. And it's a big part of our success. Now, this talk is more tactical. It's more strategic. It's staying away, within context from your culture, your core values, your character. All these things are non-negotiables. They all matter. Well, you've all heard that talk before. And this is a different talk. This is getting into what you need to do. Those are some foundational things. But what do you need to do? What are the frameworks, the systems, the things that you need to put in place to make better data-driven decisions within your business? And I just gave you 4 of them on this report card. So if you're not at $12,000 per month in profitability per team member, then you got work to do. Now, does it mean that you should go let go of all your staff? No, I don't think so. Hey, maybe you need to do some performance management. That's a different conversation at a different time. But you do need to look at this and set some benchmarks. You want to define reality and you want to work towards progress in the future. So let's move on. That's the report card. Very important. Game changer for our business. Number 3, service lines. So within what we do, there's different ways to do it. There's different styles. Now, hear me on this. I do not think if you're doing direct hire recruiting, that's all you're doing right now, I do not think that you should run out of here and try and do all 5 of these service lines. Again, you got to take this within the context that I told you that what we're talking about today, we've been working on implementing over a 4-year period, one thing at a time. We are not trying to do everything at once. It's brick by brick, making improvements, and then understanding what you want to tack on next. So let's start with that, because I think most of us at least do this. So it's direct hire, contingent, meaning we don't get paid until we make a placement. Love it. Done hundreds of millions of dollars of sales in staffing on a contingent model. By no means am I knocking it. The second type would be contract to direct, or long or short-term contract, but also contingent. You don't get paid until we make a placement. In this case, they're working for you, W-2. In this case, they work for the client. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. Otherwise, you're probably on the wrong call. Okay. Number 3, moving away from contingent, you have retained or engaged search. We call it engaged, some call it retained. It's essentially the same thing. You know, we pitch it that this is a little more white glove than this. I'm not going to get into that. The framework of this style of service line is going to be pay up front. So there's a portion of the payment that's paid up front. If you want to do things to improve, we didn't talk about it, but your fill ratio, this is a great one to look at. It will help your conversion ratio too, but it depends on your blocks. You know, if you're agreeing to submit 5 candidates to all your engaged searches, then it might actually not help your conversion ratio, because if you went 100% and executed on that promise every time, your conversion ratio would be 20%. So there's nuance to some of the stuff we're talking about, but in general, this will help your fill ratio. You know, on a fill ratio, we're also gunning to get over 30% on non-volume type hires. Well, we see from our data that when we can move to engaged search, we're over an 80% fill ratio. That is a game changer. You want to explode your business? You want to qualify what you should be working on? You want to work with your team on quality and doing things that move the needle? Listen to what I said on that. Over 80% fill ratio in this area compared to a little bit over 30 on, you know, the contingent stuff. And again, this is baseball math. You know, I believe as a contingent recruiter, if you can do a 30% fill ratio, 30% conversion ratio, if you're able to do those types of numbers or above, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, even though you fail more than you succeed. It's just like baseball, where if you bat 300 for your career, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Recruiting's the same way. But this is a game changer for those metrics. Again, for us, it's over 80%. You'll see good data on that across the industry as well. Okay, now here's the thing. If you only do direct hire recruiting right now, you've probably been pushed that you should do contracted direct to start doing reoccurrings. And I'm going to hit this from a little bit of a different way. Here. So that's true. I think it's good to look at doing that, but maybe you don't want to do that cash flow outlay. Maybe you don't want to, pay a capital company or get a loan with the bank and have a bunch of covenants or whatever the case may be. Like, I understand the reason why some people stay away from this, the risk factor, the amount of operational horsepower that it requires compared to just doing some of these other models. I get it. But you still got to figure out, you got to get assertive, you got to get intentional, you got to get creative in building recurring revenues. And so a way that you can do that is with RPO business, recruiting process outsourcing, recruitment process outsourcing. I won't write that all out right now, I'll just write RPO. And so we added this model and we do it all the way from we take on all recruitment processes for an organization, or we'll do it in sectors and work in congruence with their TA team. You know, this has been a major success for us over the last 4 years. It's really been a key point to us growing those foundational numbers that I talked about. And part of that is because it's reoccurring without all the cash flow or risk concerns of contract to direct. So if you're not doing this yet, this is a good option. Now I'm going to give you even a little mini option, because these can be longer sales cycles on taking over chunks or all of the recruitment process for a company. But you can also do what we call, and when I say you can also do this, understand we do a lot of this, but block RPOs. And block RPOs for us are like mini little RPO programs. It's got to be at least 3 spots. So we're doing it on 3 spots or above. So the thing about these block RPOs, let's go back up to the direct hire contingent. And I talked to you a little bit about this fill ratio on retained or engaged search. The same thing holds true down here, or even better. Okay, so if we have a client, and we probably all have this, you got a good client, they come to you for a lot of openings, a volume of openings. Maybe they're using some other people, and they tell you they have 10 openings. And you know those openings, you know how to fill them, you're able to fulfill the orders, but they're working with other people, they're working internally on them themselves, they're doing all these different things. So you submit on all those openings, you're working on all the openings, but this is where our industry gets itself in trouble. In our industry, again, you're going to be lucky to go 3 out of 10 for that. You're going to be really good. I don't want to use the word lucky. You're going to be really good if you fill 3 out of 10 of those. Let's use $100,000 base amount for this. I think that's a good number. So on a $100,000 salary at a 25% arrangement, with the client placement, and they have 10 openings, I'm submitting on all of them, and I get 3 hires. Okay, I'm going to produce 10, so 10 openings contingent. I'm going to produce 3 hires at 25%, 100,000 salary or compensation. So this is 75K in invoicing. So 75K in invoicing, 3 $25,000 placements. Some good stuff on that. That's great. Well, these block RPOs, specifically for a client that hires a lot and that you've been able to provide a good service to, this is where we recommend looking at this. This is what we're working on. This is what we're selling, right now to clients as a service, as a way to find a way to deliver additional value to them. It's about being people-driven, service-focused. It also happens to be really good for all these metrics that we shared. And so what we would do is we would come in and we would say, okay, we want all 10 openings. So I'm going to give you the RPO block example now. The first example netted 75,000 in invoicing. RPO block of 10 openings. Okay, we want to do a block of these for you. Here's how many fills we've done. Here's how much you've invested with us so far this year over a period of time. Here's how many openings you have. Why don't you give us this whole block? Okay, there's back and forth. There's reasons why they may want to do that. They have other vendors, on and on and on. Okay, a couple different ways to do this, but on this 10, here's the offer that we're giving. If they filled all 10 of these with us, it would be a $250,000 invoice, or invoices for those 10 openings. So we set up a scenario where we'll shave 5% off the number. I'm just using it as easy math. It could be another number. We're going to take those 10 openings on exclusively. Essentially, it becomes 20%. And we're going to bill $200,000 in invoicing on that. Now, I anticipate it's going to be a little more work than we did on this example 1. But there's probably many of you on a call that have worked a scenario like that, and they've been working many more subs, experiences with candidates, like positions, than they actually got filled. Whether positions were filled internally by competitors, they went away, whatever it is. Well, this is a great test mark for how many actual openings there is, in a way that you can increase billings on what's going to be probably a little bit more time, but it nets out to a big positive. In this scenario, in a perfect scenario, things are never perfect, but we do almost the same amount of work, although they would consider our clients first. We would have first right of refusal. We would also, and this is most important, because we own those openings, we have exclusive rights to post, to pitch, to discuss those openings. So this is one way to do this. There's scenarios where that doesn't work, or they got this other good candidate, and so here's what we do. In real life, here's what we do on this, because that sounds good, but here's the real life example. Anytime that they have a multi-opening situation, we might also look at a rate range. So if the rate range was $30 to $50 an hour, just using an example, we might give them an exclusive on 10 openings for anything that fits in this range. And while we have 10 that are exclusive, we want them to get the best candidates, even if it's not from us. We also want our agreement and solution honored. And so what we do is we set it up. We have a baseline expectation of what we should be working on, but then we have an overall framework to work off of where if someone else fills an opening, it's not a contentious thing. It's a good thing for the client. We just keep moving and we find out a way to fill 10 openings within this rate range and or style of opening for the committed to price. And we end up locking in more invoicing than when we don't have those conversations. It also deepens us into the partnership. It's been a game changer for us. Okay. The fifth thing, I'm not going to get into it a ton, but there's just other wrinkles of workforce solutions that you can offer. So I mentioned, the coaching and consulting that we do. We do that both with clients within automotive and some of the other industries that we're in. Automotive is a big one for us here in Detroit, but we're also doing that within the staffing, industry. In fact, that's how some of our portfolio companies have come into existence, is doing that model. We also do a lot of HR consulting. And again, we didn't just drop all this at once. We built it brick by brick, one thing at a time. As it worked, we moved on to the next. So we'll leave that there. This takes me into this next part, and I'm going to go quick on this. So the more service lines you have, or sectors of business, you got to be careful on crossing service lines. And so here's the deal on this. I'm going to give kind of a pass. If you're at 1 million in gross profit to 3 million in gross profit, you can consider disregarding what I'm going to say, because I think at this levels, one of the benefits, because the team is smaller, and a lot of times the owners are involved in the day-to-day sales, the team can work harder and cross those different types of service lines, and it can be a part of their success. Ask me how I know, because we did a ton of this. Not only did we cross all these service lines up that we were doing, unfortunately, we weren't doing all of those at the time, but we were doing direct hire, we were doing contract, we were doing VMS recruiting, we were doing volume recruiting, we were doing niche recruiting, we were doing technical recruiting. Like, we're doing a lot of those different styles, and then we're doing it in 15 sectors at one point within Spark Talent, the first company within the portfolio. And that was a lot of crossing. And we were able to grow all the way to about 6.2 million in gross profit that way. And if I go back, I would have made the changes here, because it was part of our success and what brought us here. It was also what made it harder for us to move to the next line, which is 10 million in gross profit. You can't operate the same way at these levels, specifically here. This can be one person. This could be one really good salesperson, or a small team with a great person, or maybe two. This requires building a team, letting people own areas, letting people become experts. And it's probably going to be some people that don't have ownership in the company, meaning that you need to create a good career path, a good setup, but also understand that as good as you do on that, like, someone's not going to work as hard as you should be working as the entrepreneur. You just got to understand that reality. So this is where I feel passionate about this coming into play. You got to focus people in on these areas and let them drive down on building the proper end process amount, because everything we said, understand that it all gets mixed up when you cross these lines. Oh, they're doing VMS one day, they're recruiting an executive the next day. They're doing light industrial, they're doing skilled trades. They're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this industry, and they're experts in nothing. And they're getting diluted and diluted and diluted on what they could actually learn and do and the service they could provide. You're going to struggle to break this amount. We know this from experience. We had to reevaluate how we were doing this and rebuild it day by day, month by month, quarter by quarter, and we're still working on it here today. We've had some success, but we're still working on it. So you have to be really careful, specifically at this level. So what do I recommend? Having people that focus on direct hire, having people that focus on contract, separate buckets, separate KPIs, separate measurements, separate in processes, all this kind of stuff. Having people that run our engaged search, having people for us that work on our RPO teams, having people for us that provide our other services, little micro teams. At one point, everyone was doing everything. We had to go brick by brick on this. So again, don't try and do this overnight, but the more of this you're doing and the farther you're going on this gross profit number, the more you have your work cut out for you. Okay. Two more things. If you haven't already and you want to grow specifically to that 10 million or above gross profit level, you have to build your ops team. This is a big struggle for us because, and I think for a lot of us, because we may be good recruiters or good salespeople, but not many of us have run or are great in operations. You know, for me, I was fortunate enough to come like from a finance back, like my degree was in finance, but I had no actual experience. I was interested in finance. I knew enough to be dangerous, and it got me through the first part. But the education that I've had to learn through mentors and books and experiences is what's got me, to this place. And the hardest thing to do over our first 10 years at Spark Talent was to build an ops team because I'd never done it. So how do I recommend it? I'm not going to get into every role or all the trickle roles, but so you want to have a good HR person? You're going to have to mix these around based on whatever skill set you may have. You may do them differently, but this person should be doing the office management, the general day-to-day, and then specifically, if you're doing any kind of contract staffing, you want them owning your work comp and understanding that and staying on top of it and doing things that are best in practice. You want to make that investment. Number two, for us, was hire a good person and payroll. And again, at first, this person did all of that. Then we had a specialist break off and they start running our payroll. That was number two for us. Number three, within finance, you hire someone out of finance. So quickly on that, and again, even back to the growth profit, mentioned, you need to be running good books at all times. It's really important to run good books. You don't want to be behind on them. You don't want to not have them right. This is all your data. You can't run a lot of these things we're talking about unless you have good books. So you need to work with a good team on that, or you need to build one. So for some people, this may be first. It was third for us because there were periods of time where I was doing this. We brought someone in when we were at that about 6 million in gross profit level to run as a controller. I think that was early for a controller. And ultimately, I let him go. Not to be embarrassing, but that's what happened. Looking back on that, I probably would have hired a senior staff accountant or a staff accountant. So I think below 10 million, again, depending on your acumen, say below 10 million in gross profit, I'd probably stick with a good senior staff accountant. If you have some financial acumen and you understand your books, as you go past the 10 million marker, you may want to consider a controller. I think both those are early for a CFO, but you should work with a good CPA as well. That goes without discussion. That's a must. So this is the build of the ops team. There's layers that might fall in, below these. There's other people. It's not necessarily going to be three people. This is one of the number one attractions, for our portfolio companies is that we have one centralized ops team and our portfolio companies get to focus on the staffing and recruiting components, and they get all this data that we talked about kind of built in to the infrastructure that we have. So either you need something like that, or you're going to have to go out and make these investments. And then again, just these are the three that I would do. You're going to shift the order around based on your core competencies. Okay. Last thing. So some of you may have heard chunks of this before. I'm doing this as it pertains to staffing and what we do. So there's 6 sales levers. There's 6 ways you can sell. I picked this up from Alex Hormozy. You probably know who that is, or a lot of you probably do. But what's important, whether you're listening to me, him, someone else, is not like, oh, that doesn't apply to me, it's a different industry. How does it apply to us? How do we put it into our business? So this is, I want to give him credit for this, because this is where, not, we were already doing a lot of this stuff, but the way he communicated it to me made a lot of sense. And it helped us push forward and work on these things. And we're still working on them now. But the first type is outbound sales. So for us, that's new business development, biz dev. So we have a team that's all they do is business development for the portfolio companies. You may have a scenario, and we've done this in the past, where the account managers do biz dev, or the owners do biz dev, or everyone does biz dev. And there's some versions of that where that still happens, but like we've built out a team that focuses solely on outbound sales. And it's so we're constantly cranking this lever. Okay. Number 2 is inbound. Inbound, our definition of that is our account management. So it's our people that run the accounts day to day. And a big component of account management for us, and a big mantra within our company, is that we're all recruiters. We're all recruiters. And so our account managers should be the number 1 recruiters within their accounts. They should lead by example on that. They may get other recruiting support, but they are the inbound sales team. They then push in, through fulfillment, because this is the best way to get the third one, referrals. Fulfillment pushes this through. So for us, we really struggled with this as we scaled. We struggled to maintain and not get diluted on how we brought in referrals. We had to get intentional about it. And as we built this out and understood that it's the account manager and it's at placement when we really want to push for referrals, whether it's from the candidate, whether it's from the client, we want to do both. We implement some technology, and the phone conversations or face-to-face conversations, like I mentioned, we do both, and we do it from the account manager, recruiting, and the technology level within the referral area. We're actually making a change here at the beginning of the year. Before the beginning of the year, it goes live next month, but our referrals system that we were using, I'm not going to mention the one because they're good guys. We're just going a different direction. We tried this last year. It went okay, but we feel like we found a better technology and a better way to run more of the process internally and do it up to our service standards. So having referrals on is a sales lever. Number 4 is paid ads. Some of you may do geofencing and target marketing, and we don't do a ton of that. We've done it in small pockets, and I do expect us to do more. But our paid ads, the way I look at this is our Indeed spend, our LinkedIn spend, our spend specifically as we allocate it towards credits and postings, and then optimizing those postings. This is our paid ad area. This is the number 1 area for us when we have good data. It's really like pouring gasoline on a fire. But I struggle with this one the most too, because to me, this can be like a drug. You got to watch this. Back to, this is why we started this conversation with do the core fundamentals. Talk to your team about the core fundamentals. Don't lose the core fundamentals, because I'm not saying you don't do stuff like this. We do a ton, and we test this out and are willing to ratchet it up quite a bit. However, if this is all our teams got in their tool belt, they become transactional. We lose our white glove experience. We lose the candidate and the client experience, and we will not be successful long-term. So this is the number 1 area that we tinker with, and we do spend, invest a lot of money in this area. It's also the one that keeps me up at night the most on are we going too much? And it comes back to, we just got to be intentional about that first part, the core fundamentals. Okay. Number 5 is content media. So for us, we've been posting and doing some stuff, and it's really a long play. We don't really try and look at what we sell within, we made this post and we sold this. This is long-standing. This is a big part of our recruiting process internally. This has produced portfolio companies as well. This has even become a portfolio company. We're so passionate about it. We sit here right now, we're running this out of our studio for Bolt Creative Strategies, and they run the content media for all our organizations. But having this going at some level, even if it's text posts or stills, or you do one video a week, you should start somewhere and work on getting your brand and who you are and what you're about out there. We've seen this pay dividends in all these areas. Sales, recruiting of candidates, recruiting of internal team members, probably number one. And like I said, it's become a company for us, and it's helped create some of the other ones. The sixth thing is affiliates. We've had this in beta testing throughout the year because we wanted to test out a dashboard, and we're testing out the technology on it. We didn't love what we saw out of that dashboard. So both in our referral area and our affiliate area, we're working on bringing more of that process in-house and controlling it within our infrastructure. So this is what we're working on right now. But we beta tested this last year and added an additional $300,000 in gross profit from the beta test. Now I'd like to see that at least 10x next year, but I want it done right. I want the dashboards to be clean. I want to be transparent with the affiliates on how they're getting paid and when they're getting paid and when things like guarantees clear and et cetera. Like, so we're still working at this because I refuse to put out a subpar product. But I share the amount with you because if $300,000 additional in gross profit would be it's impactful to our business. If that's impactful to your business, you don't have to have it all perfect to start. So this is an area that we're tinkering. This is probably the lightest area that we are in right now. We're really just dipping our toes into this. We're going to figure it out, something I'm super passionate about, and it's something that is really a focal point of what I'm doing within driving, new sales, for the organizations. So that's it for today. I want to thank you guys for coming today and starting this out with me. I want to thank Ben again for asking me to kick us off. I want you to know, again, these are the things that we are literally working on we're not perfect at these. We are working on these things and we got to get better. But I'm giving you the same things that we're working on because it comes down to the execution. I hope that's helpful. I know that it's been life-changing for us and for many people within our organization. And I hope you get at least one nugget out of that, but I know there's a lot more.